Here's another thing. Sometimes we miss miracles because we're expecting something grand, something loud, undeniable, something that knocks us off our feet. We think miracles only come in the form of parting seas or fire falling from the sky. But God doesn't just work in the extraordinary, He works in the everyday. And when we only look for the big, dramatic moments, we miss the small miracles that are happening all around us. Take a moment and think about that breath you just took. That's a miracle. It's not something we often stop to consider, but the very fact that your heart is beating, your lungs are working, and your body is functioning is nothing short of miraculous. Each new day is another chance, a gift you didn't have to earn but received anyway. It's a small miracle, but it's a profound one. And what about those opportunities that seem to come out of nowhere? Maybe it's a phone call from someone who offers help when you didn't even ask. Maybe it's a door that opens unexpectedly, a conversation that sparks an idea, or a chance encounter that changes your direction. These moments often feel like coincidences, but when you take a step back and look closer, you realize they're not random at all. They're orchestrated. They're God's way of reminding you, I see you, I'm working on your behalf, even in the little things. The problem is, we're often so focused on the big picture, the big miracle we're waiting for, that we overlook these smaller ones. We're waiting for a financial breakthrough and miss the friend who buys us lunch when we're struggling. We're praying for a clear answer to our problems and miss the peace that comes in a quiet moment of reflection. We're so focused on the storm we want God to calm that we don't notice He's already given us the strength to endure it. The small miracles matter because they're like breadcrumbs, little reminders that God is present and active in our lives. They build our faith in the waiting. They're His way of saying, I'm here and I'm not done with you yet. When you start to recognize these small moments for what they are, you'll see that your life is full of evidence of God's love and provision. Think about how Jesus performed miracles during His time on earth. Yes, there were big, undeniable moments, healing the blind, raising the dead, calming storms. But there were also smaller, quieter miracles, turning water into wine at a wedding, providing fish and bread for the hungry, speaking words of comfort to those in need. Those moments weren't always dramatic, but they were deeply personal. They showed that God's miracles are not just about power, they're about care, about meeting us where we are. And that's what the small miracles do. They remind us that God is not distant or detached. He's intimately involved in the details of our lives. When you start to see the small miracles, you'll realize they're not small at all. They're intentional. They're designed to remind you that you're not forgotten, that you're not alone, that God's plan for you is still unfolding. But recognizing these miracles requires a shift in perspective. It requires slowing down, being present, and choosing gratitude. It means looking at your life with eyes of faith, not just eyes of expectation. When you do that, you'll start to see that the things you once overlooked were miracles all along. So don't wait for the thunderclap or the earth-shattering moment to declare that God is at work in your life. Look for Him in the quiet, in the subtle, in the everyday. Because those small miracles, they're God's way of preparing you for the bigger ones to come. They're His assurance that He's already moving, that He's already making a way. And when you see them for what they are, you'll realize just how blessed you already are. But here's the catch: you've got to surrender. That word surrender doesn't sit well with most of us. It sounds like losing, like giving up control, like admitting we don't have it all figured out. And maybe that's exactly why it's so hard. We want to hold on to our plans, our timelines, our dreams. We think if we just work harder, push further, or stay the course, we'll make it all happen the way we envisioned. But let me tell you, real growth, real miracles, real purpose, they don't come from holding on, they come from letting go. You've got to let go of your plan and embrace His. I'm not saying your dreams don't matter, far from it. But sometimes the dreams we cling to so tightly are the very things keeping us from stepping into the life God has for us. We're so focused on the picture we've painted in our minds that we fail to see the masterpiece He's creating. Surrendering doesn't mean giving up on yourself. It means trusting that God knows more than you do, that His plan is greater than anything you could imagine, and that His timing is infinitely better than yours. And here's the thing about surrender, it's not a one-time deal. It's a daily decision. Every day you've got to choose to lay down your pride, your fear, your need for control, and say, God, I trust you. Lead me. It's not always easy. In fact, it can be downright uncomfortable. Surrender often means walking into the unknown, stepping into situations where you don't have all the answers, but that's where faith grows. That's where God does his best work, in the spaces where we say, I can't, but you can. Now, I know what you're thinking. If I let go of my plan, what happens to all my hard work, all my effort, all my dreams? Let me tell you something. When you trade your plan for his, you're not giving up. No, you're leveling up. You're stepping into a purpose that's bigger, better, and beyond what you could ever create on your own. You're allowing God to take what you've worked for and transform it into something eternal, something meaningful, something that not only blesses you, but also blesses others. Think about this: when a seed is planted in the ground, it has to surrender to the soil. It has to stop being a seed in order to grow into what it was meant to be. It doesn't fight the process. It doesn't hold on to its old form. It lets go, and in doing so, it transforms. That's what surrender looks like for us. It's allowing God to take what we are now and turn it into what we're meant to be. And let me tell you, his vision for your life is so much greater than anything you can see right now. But surrender requires trust. It requires believing that even when you can't see the full picture, the artist is still at work. It means accepting that the detours, the delays, and even the disappointments are all part of his design. They're not obstacles, they're opportunities. They're shaping you, preparing you, refining you for what's ahead. And when you look back, you'll see that every twist and turn was leading you to something far greater than you could have imagined. Let me make this clear: surrender isn't about losing control, it's about shifting control. It's about placing your life in the hands of the one who created you, the one who loves you, the one who knows what's best for you. And when you do that, you'll find that the weight you've been carrying starts to lift. The anxiety, the pressure, the fear of failure, they begin to fade because you're no longer relying on your own strength. You're relying on his. So if you're holding onto your plan with clenched fists, I challenge you to open your hands, release it. Trust that what God has for you is not just good, but exceedingly abundantly above all you could ask or think. When you surrender, you're not settling, you're stepping into the fullness of what you were created for. And that, my friend, is the ultimate level up. And when those miracles come, don't keep them to yourself. Share them. That's the beauty of God's work in our lives. It's not just for us. It's meant to ripple outward, to touch others, to inspire, to uplift, and to ignite hope in someone who's struggling to see the light. When you've experienced a miracle, you carry a story. And that story, it might be the spark that lights someone else's faith. Think about the people in your life who have shared their stories with you. Maybe it was a friend who overcame an impossible situation, or a family member who found peace in the middle of chaos. Their testimony didn't just tell you about what happened to them, it reminded you of what's possible. It showed you that if God could move in their life, he could move in yours too. That's the power of sharing miracles. It connects us. It reminds us that we're not alone and that the same God who worked then is still working now. But sometimes we hold back. We keep our stories to ourselves because we think they're not big enough or dramatic enough to make a difference. We think, who am I to share this? It's just a small thing. But let me tell you, there's no such thing as a small miracle. If God has moved in your life, whether in a way that felt monumental or subtle, it's worth sharing. You don't know who needs to hear it. You don't know whose faith is hanging on by a thread, waiting for a reason to believe again. When you share your testimony, you give others permission to hope. You give them a reason to trust, to believe that their prayers are not in vain, that their waiting is not wasted. Your story might be the lifeline someone else is looking for. It's not about boasting or drawing attention to yourself. It's about pointing people to the one who made it happen. It's about saying, look at what God did for me. And if he did it for me, he can do it for you too. Sharing your miracles doesn't have to be complicated. It can be as simple as a conversation, a post, or a heartfelt moment of vulnerability. Maybe it's telling a coworker about how God opened a door you thought was closed. Maybe it's encouraging a friend with the story of how you found peace in the midst of a storm. Maybe it's standing in front of a group and sharing how your life changed because of God's grace. Whatever it looks like, it's about being willing to let your story be used for something greater than yourself. And here's the thing, when you share your testimony, it strengthens your own faith too. It reminds you of what God has done, of how far you've come, and of the ways He's shown up for you. It keeps you grounded in gratitude and expectancy. It's easy to forget the miracles once we've moved past them, but sharing them keeps them alive. It keeps us connected to the source of our blessings. Your testimony also has a way of attracting more miracles. When you declare what God has done, you create an atmosphere of faith. You're saying, I believe in what He's done, and I believe in what He's going to do next. That kind of faith opens the door for more of God's power to flow into your life and the lives of those around you. Don't underestimate the impact of your story. Don't let fear or doubt silence you. Someone out there is waiting to hear what you've experienced, and your words might be the encouragement they need to keep going. Maybe they're battling something you've already overcome. Maybe they're facing a challenge that feels insurmountable, and your story is the reminder they need that miracles are still possible. So when the miracles come, and they will come, don't hide them. Share them boldly, humbly, and with a heart full of gratitude. Let your testimony be the evidence of God's faithfulness. Let it be the spark that lights someone else's faith and the reminder that God is still in the business of doing the impossible. Because when you share what He's done, you're not just telling a story, you're planting seeds of hope that can grow into something extraordinary. So begin with God. Watch Him take what looks like the impossible and turn it into a reality. Trust Him, walk with Him, and prepare for the miracles that will follow. Start today, start now. Begin with God and see miracles unfold in your life. Thank you. Hey everyone, let me tell you something today. If you want miracles, you've got to start in the right place. Begin with God, not halfway, not when it's convenient, but from the very beginning. When you start with Him, miracles aren't just possibilities, they're promises. Now, I know what some of you are thinking, miracles? In my life, yes, in your life, but here's the thing, miracles aren't just random acts of luck or some far-off tales we read about. They're real, they're tangible, and they're available to you. But here's the key, God doesn't just sprinkle miracles on those who stand still. He's not a genie granting wishes without a purpose. No, He moves when you move toward Him. He works when you step out in faith and trust Him fully. That's how it works. You've got to make God your foundation. You've got to put Him first, and then watch what happens. Think about it. How often do we ask God for a miracle, yet we're not willing to do what it takes to align ourselves with His will? We sit still, hoping that the answer will drop from the sky, all wrapped up and ready to go. But that's not how God operates. He's not interested in mere spectators. He's looking for participants, people who are ready to act, to move, to trust Him even when the outcome isn't clear. It's like walking in the dark with nothing but a small flashlight. You may not see the whole path, but if you keep stepping forward, the light moves with you. That's what faith looks like, and that's where miracles happen. The truth is, miracles require trust, and trust requires surrender. That's where many of us hesitate. We hold on to our own plans, our own timing, thinking we know what's best. But let me tell you, when you let go of your grip and allow God to take control, that's when you see Him show up in ways you never imagined. It's not about sitting back and saying, God, fix this. It's about saying, God, I trust you. Show me what I need to do. Lead me and I will follow. When you approach God with that kind of humility, that kind of openness, He will respond. He will move. He will bring miracles into your life. But let me be clear about something. Miracles aren't always immediate. Sometimes God's answer is wait, and I know waiting can be hard. It tests your patience, it challenges your faith. But understand this, God's timing is never wrong. He's never late. You may feel like the clock is ticking and you're running out of time, but God operates on a different schedule. And when his miracle arrives, it's always right on time. You'll look back and realize that the waiting wasn't a punishment, it was preparation. He was working behind the scenes, aligning things in ways you couldn't see, making sure that when the miracle came, it would be exactly what you needed. And let me tell you, miracles aren't always wrapped in big, bold packages. Sometimes they come quietly. Sometimes they're small, almost unnoticeable, but they're no less significant. That job you thought you wouldn't get, that relationship that unexpectedly brought healing, that moment of peace in the middle of chaos, those are miracles. Don't dismiss them just because they're not flashy. Every single one of those moments is a reminder that God is present, that he's working, that he hasn't forgotten about you. But the question remains, are you willing to trust him? Are you willing to make him your foundation? Because that's where it all begins. You can't expect miracles if you're not building your life on the solid ground of faith. You've got to prioritize him not just on Sundays, not just when you're in trouble, but every single day. Put him first in your decisions, your relationships, your work, your dreams. When you do that, you're not just inviting him to be a part of your life, you're giving him the lead. And when God leads, miracles follow. And here's one last thing when the miracle comes, and don't keep it to yourself. Share it. Tell the world what God has done in your life. Because miracles aren't just for you, they're meant to inspire others, to remind them that God is real, that he's powerful, and that he's still in the business of making the impossible possible. Your testimony could be the very thing that sparks faith in someone else. So start with God, move toward him, trust him, and prepare to see miracles unfold in ways you never thought possible. The problem is we get stuck on fear. Fear grips us, paralyzes us, and keeps us from moving forward. It whispers in our ear, what if you fail? What if you wait too long and it's too late? What will people think if you fall short? Fear loves to plant doubt in our minds, convincing us that stepping out is too risky, that staying where we are is safer. But let me tell you something, fear is a liar. It's a roadblock that keeps you from stepping into the life God has planned for you. And the antidote, the cure for fear, it's faith. Faith and fear cannot occupy the same space. Faith is bold. Faith says, I don't need to see the whole picture to take the next step because I know who's painting it. That's what faith does. It trusts the artist, even when the canvas looks incomplete. You may not know what the finished masterpiece will look like, but when you trust the one holding the brush, you can move forward with confidence. The truth is, faith isn't easy. It asks us to step out even when the road ahead is blurry. It asks us to trust God when we don't have all the answers, when the plan feels incomplete. That's hard for us because we like control. We like to see the entire map before we start the journey. But here's the thing, miracles don't happen in the realm of certainty. They live in the unknown. They live in those moments where all you have is trust, where all you can say is, God, I don't know how, but I know you will. Think about the stories of faith we know so well. Moses didn't have a detailed plan when he stood at the Red Sea with Pharaoh's army closing in behind him. He had faith that God would make a way. David didn't wait for the perfect moment to face Goliath. He stepped out with nothing but a sling, a few stones, and faith that God was bigger than the giant in front of him. Time and again, we see this truth. Miracles happen when people step out in faith, not when they stand still in fear. Fear will try to convince you that the risks are too high. It will magnify the obstacles and minimize the possibilities. It will tell you that the unknown is dangerous, that it's better to stay where you are, even if you're not happy, even if you're not fulfilled. But faith whispers a different story. Faith says, step out, take the risk. Trust that God is already working, even if you can't see it. It's in those uncertain moments, the moments where fear tells you to stay put, that God does his best work. Those are the moments where miracles are born. But you can't experience a miracle if you're not willing to move. You can't see the impossible become possible if you're too afraid to take the first step. Faith is an action word. It's not passive, it's active. It's moving forward when the outcome isn't guaranteed. It's saying, God, I trust you even when everything around you feels unstable. And here's the amazing thing about faith: when you step out, God meets you there. He doesn't let you walk alone. He doesn't leave you hanging. He shows up in ways that remind you he was there all along. Fear will never completely disappear. It's part of being human. But when you let faith take the lead, fear loses its power. It becomes smaller, quieter, and less influential. Faith gives you the courage to say, I'm moving forward no matter what. So don't let fear keep you from the life God has for you. Don't let it hold you back from the miracles waiting on the other side of your faith. Step into the unknown. Trust the one who knows the way. That's where miracles live, in the space between fear and faith, in the moments where only God can make a way. Now let's talk about timing. See, we live in a world that thrives on speed. Everything around us is instant messages, fast food, same-day delivery. We've been conditioned to believe that faster is better, that waiting is a waste of time. But God doesn't work like that. He's not bound by our schedules, our clocks, or our deadlines. He works on his own time, and his timing, it's always perfect. It may not feel perfect in the moment. In fact, it might feel frustratingly slow, even late. But trust me, when his miracle shows up, you'll understand why the wait was necessary. Here's the thing about waiting: it's uncomfortable. It tests us in ways that nothing else can. When we're waiting, doubt creeps in. We start to wonder, did God hear me? Is he really going to come through? We question his plan because we can't see what he's doing behind the scenes. But that's where faith comes in. Faith isn't just about believing in what God can do, it's about trusting in his timing. It's about understanding that he sees the bigger picture, even when all we can see is a sliver of the puzzle. Think about a farmer planting seeds. The farmer doesn't plant today and expect a full harvest tomorrow. They understand that there's a process. Seeds need time to take root, to grow, to bear fruit. If you rush that process, you end up with something incomplete, something less than it could be. God's timing works the same way. When he's preparing a miracle in your life, it's not just about delivering the result, it's about making sure you're ready to receive it. Sometimes the wait isn't about the miracle itself, it's about what God is doing in you during that time. You see, waiting isn't wasted. In the waiting, God is building something in you: patience, strength, faith. He's teaching you to rely on him, to trust him in ways you never have before. It's in the waiting that we learn how to let go of our need for control and lean into his plan. And when the miracle finally comes, it's not just about the blessing, it's about the transformation that took place in you while you were waiting. Let me tell you something else about timing. Sometimes what feels like a delay is really a setup for something greater. You may think God is running late, but he's actually preparing the perfect conditions for your breakthrough. Maybe he's aligning opportunities you can't see yet. Maybe he's working in the hearts of people who will play a role in your blessing. Maybe he's closing doors that would have led you in the wrong direction so he can open the right ones at the right time. And when his timing comes through, it all makes sense. You look back and realize that if he had given you what you wanted when you wanted it, you wouldn't have been ready. The circumstances wouldn't have been right. The blessing wouldn't have been as impactful. God's timing isn't just about delivering a miracle, it's about delivering it in a way that has maximum purpose and impact. But let's be real, waiting is hard. It's hard to trust when you don't see progress. It's hard to stay patient when everyone else seems to be moving forward while you're standing still. But remember this: God's silence is not his absence. Just because you don't see movement doesn't mean nothing is happening. The seed is growing beneath the soil, even when you can't see it. The same is true for God's plans in your life. So hold on, keep praying, keep believing. Don't let impatience rob you of the blessing that's coming. Trust that God's timing is never late, never wrong, and always worth the wait. And when his miracle shows up, you'll understand why every second of waiting was necessary.